Annoyingly, I have to stop that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's happening there.
Chaos is on. I mean, we've botched the start of this. We're talking about a botch. It all comes full circle. It was intentional because there was a really scary botch on NXT 2.0 last night when Jacy Jayne tried to do a suicide dive. I am El Fakador Laurie Blake here covering for Pete Quinnell, who is away on holiday, and I'm joined by Tempest the Wrestler to talk about NXT. It's the temp. I'm the temp, and your Tempest. It's almost like we planned it. I mean, if we planned it, I would have also worn my mask. But I actually left that in London this morning. So there you go, which is where I was this morning. And now I'm back in Manchester.
Next time.
So that's fun. I rushed back, Tempest, to review NXT. And I wish I hadn't. Because it was all right. It was another completely okay bit of wrestling show. But yeah, the main topic we're going to talk about is this botched dive from Jacy Jayne, which was quite scary, frankly. She was in a triple threat match against Io Shirai and Persia Pirotta to decide who got to spin the wheel.
Because that matters.
And make the deal. It's random, Tempest. It's random.
It is.
I can't believe that all of them didn't go to the ring and go, that doesn't matter. Just spin it. Who cares? Unless the wheel knows who spun it.
I got irrationally upset about this one. Just I saw they announced the gimmick on Twitter, and I was like, well, that's dumb. But I just kind of put it out of my mind. And then when they were doing the match, at one point, I think Persia Pirotta looked back at the stage, and they're like, she's looking at the wheel. I was like, who gives a shit about the wheel? This was just the dumbest thing.
It's just so thick. It doesn't make any sense. Like to be like, it's not Family Fortunes. It's not Wheel of Fortune. It's not like you don't get anything for spinning the wheel. It's not like you win a prize. You just get a horrible stipulation for a match that you were going to have. That is irrelevant. That should be irrelevant to your character. Like obviously Io Shirai eventually getting to spin the wheel and getting a ladder match makes sense for Io Shirai is probably the only person really in that match that seems suited to a ladder match. But let's move on to the task at hand, which is to talk about the suicide dive that put the suicide in suicide dive and not a lot of the dive in suicide dive. Jacy runs as it was Persia was outside the ring. Jacy ran at the ropes at about 1% power. And did this dive where she barely made it through the ropes and then just rocketed straight to the floor. It's something we've seen a fair few times in kind of NXT and WWE in general. And yes, she then took a springboard moonsault from Io Shirai with Persia and then was written out of the match. Essentially, medics had to come down to ringside, and then they had to announce after the break that during the break they'd called it. She wasn't going to be involved in the match anymore. I haven't seen any updates on this. I don't think WWE has said anything outwardly that whether or not she's sustained an injury or anything like that. They were still continuing during the show to put over the match at Halloween Havoc. So seemingly the triple threat is going to happen. But do you think that's under threat, having seen what we saw?
I hope not. I'd really be sad if this resulted in a more serious injury that would involve her having to miss this ladder match. I don't know exactly what went wrong here. I don't know if it was just a really poor suicide dive that just went awry, or I've seen a number of times where if someone's supposed to cut you off mid-suicide dive and hit the big shot as you're coming through the ropes and they don't do it, then you're just kind of like, what do I do? Because you're not supposed to go all the way through, but you can't just stop. I don't know that that's the case either. That's just speculation on my part, but this was rough looking, man. Like, this was tough. I know we've seen a few times in recent years where someone just does a headstand going through the ropes, and it's just awful looking. And, oh, man, it was tough to watch. I don't know exactly why we needed to have these particular folk in this match. If I was booking, I'd probably would put the 3 most experienced members of each team in the match, as opposed to the ones that need a little bit more work. But I think that's more of a problem with NXT in general these days. What comes of it next week? I hope we just get the match as advertised and things go a bit more smoothly.
Well, this is it. This is the thing about NXT 2.0 is that it's putting a lot of people who are a lot younger and a lot more green in the ring with Io Shirai or Tommaso Ciampa. So people are going to want to bring a bigger game that maybe they're not prepared for, and maybe this could be an argument for that kind of thing of like, you know, this was an element where someone wasn't quite prepared for every outcome. Maybe, you know, I can't, from watching it back, I'm not really sure, but maybe like Persia wasn't particularly in position as far as Jacy was concerned as she was running up. So that caused a moment of hesitation, which lost her the momentum that she needed to carry her out of the ring. Or like you said, maybe it was that she was meant to cut her off and wasn't quite in position. And that then caused the kind of fall down. But it looked to me like she was meant to take a dive. Because that's where Persia was placed. But yeah, she just never quite made it there. Yeah, it looked really, like, to be perfectly honest, it looked quite horrible. And yeah, it's good that she was taken out of the match at the time. But yeah, it would be a massive shame here to have built to this. And then for these teams to not really have the ladder match, especially as Mandy is already in a match. So she's not like she could just step in and take over sort of Jacy's position without that compromising another element of the story of Halloween Havoc next week, because it would mean that Mandy wouldn't be fresh for her match against Raquel Gonzalez, which is something you would want to be against Raquel Gonzalez because she's huge. So yeah, it would be a huge shame, I think, if something like this does. But it could just be indicative of like, and I think people might, you know, think about it in those terms of this is the thing about putting people who are a lot further down the ladder in the ring with people who are much more experienced, is that sometimes when those more experienced people are high flyers and you want to do these kind of, you know, you want to show off as well, things happen that maybe not everyone, that aren't as safe as just doing some regular moves.
Yeah. And kind of going back to the point about next week, if I had to put money on it, I would have said that Jacy Jayne and Gigi Dolan would probably win the tag titles. You know, it seems like they're going in the direction of Toxic Attraction. So that's even more fuel that you don't want to burn up on having to do it without Jacy Jayne involved. But yeah, I've seen a lot of examples over the last few years in WWE where they get someone who isn't all the way there yet, but they have to do a complicated spot, or they just make the matches and the things that they're doing that much more complicated than necessary. Because when you're learning how to wrestle, you want to do singles matches, you want to do tags, and you can do those things and learn. And I don't think these two women, Persia and Jacy Jayne, are not like, you know, first week out of wrestling school by any means. They've both been working for a while. But at the same time, there is something to knowing the limitations of your wrestlers and not putting them in the big top of the hour triple threat match with stipulations on the line and suicide dives and stuff like that, you know, because the rest of the match was not particularly that great either, where Persia Pirotta did the double suplex spot, and I think Jacy Jayne got about halfway over, and I honestly, upon first initial viewing, I thought she had gotten hurt there before the suicide dive even happened, just because I was like, oh god, it's terrifying, please no one get hurt. And then someone did. And I think Io Shirai went for like a crossface and never even got Persia down to the ground because they just kind of fell over at a point. It was just kind of a messy match and not a particularly good one. I'll give credit to Io Shirai for kind of pulling it together and making it a singles match after the injury, but I don't know. I think they're kind of overcomplicating things that don't need that level of expertise just yet.
I think because they were quite clearly trying to hit that kind of pace as well of like an NXT triple threat match where it is people playing off each other, people combining their moves even though they're not a tag team, for instance. Like I think Jacy and Io did there was a good little stretch where they were sort of cutting down Persia and they were both working her over as they sort of like both kind of bounced off the ropes and hit kicks and things at different kind of coinciding times. It was good. for that very brief period. And then, yeah, I think, like you said, Io and Persia did a good job to put on a singles match after that. But then the match has kind of lost its stakes because one team's already out. There weren't really stakes that made sense to begin with. It's a shame that this match was put on to build hype for something that doesn't really make any narrative sense, and it's led to this. So yeah, it's a bit of a downer, that entire kind of section of the show, essentially. And yeah, it just leaves a lot of questions leading into next week when Halloween Havoc seems like it's something that, this is the kind of, feels like NXT's attempt to be like, this is our first big thing that we're going to do with NXT 2.0, and we're going to have some probably a fair few title changes, which would be interesting to see.
I would think so.
Sorry, go for it.
No, I was about done. The only other thing that I was really going to say is I don't see any any reason why this match couldn't have been Indy Hartwell, Io Shirai, and Gigi Dolan. Just put on the best match possible with the most experienced people. Do that for TV, and if you tour around with NXT again, that's when you can kind of give a lot of the less experienced people more of a chance to learn before doing this on TV and putting on a bad TV match.
But also keep you guys fresh as well. Keep your performers fresh for the show next week when they're doing the big ladder matches. Like, do they need to be doing a triple threat match this week so they can spin a wheel?
Exactly.
Is that really the stakes that you want to is that really the thing you want people to be doing a week before they're going to have a ladder match, which is probably going to be bump city? I wouldn't, but there we are. Anyway, we'll move on to talk about the rest of the show, but first of all, let's talk about some Ultra Chats that we've had in. We've had one from Robert Waters who said, I rewatched the video. Her feet caught the ropes on the way out. Yeah, I think I think she just didn't have the momentum to kind of carry her through. And yeah, you do see that quite a lot. Like you see that like people like Samoa Joe when he does his suicide dive, he goes out sideways, so that isn't a problem. And I think when you've got to have that spring and that kind of like, you've got to really be putting your effort into to having forward momentum. And there was just something that happened as she was running up to the ropes that she either wasn't putting enough in, or she saw something when she was looking outside that made her think, oh no, I don't want to do that really. And that moment of hesitation just slowed her down enough so her feet caught the ropes, I think. Charles Berg, who's been a member for 6 months in a row, thank you, Charles Berg, says, that was a big ouchie, full-on Wighammed herself. My cards are active again, had to deal with fraud. Somebody stole from me. I'll make them pay. Blooming hell, Charles. Well, I hope you managed to get that sorted. But thank you for being a member for 6 months in a row.
Yeah, I hope they didn't make you pay for their stuff. Nailed it.
Bacon Rasher says, hi, lads. First week watching NXT 2.0 for me because of work, and it was okay, but just okay. So many characters, and most will end up released, but loved D'Angelo's post-match. Like him already, and why don't grizzled young veterans get a call-up? As a Brit and a wrestling fan, I love them. Also, can you wish Bentley, his doggo, a speedy recovery? He's been in the vets 4 times in 3 days. Hashtag LIW. Oh, I hope Bentley gets better soon. I hope that's not very nice when your pet's ill at all, is it? And I really hope you're doing well, Bacon Rasher. And yeah, I think D'Angelo is a lot of fun, and I think he's actually, even though it's all a bit cliche, the whole character, it's getting over with people, which is good. I also agree with GYV should be called up, I think, as well. They're so good.
Well, in a perfect world, they should be called up. In a perfect world, they'd be called up and push. But I don't want to see grizzled young veterans called up and split up for no reason after 4 months.
One of them can team with Sheamus at some point, probably. They're from a similar part of the world, maybe. Who knows?
Unsubscribe. Don't want.
A lot of the Irish end up in Liverpool. There's a ferry. Jeremy Bracken says, he's back and better than ever. Got a knack for making shows better. The Quizlemania champion, that bastard, Tempest, has come back.
I got it. I can't put it on because I'm wearing headphones.
There is that bitch.
Yeah. I can't put it on because my headphones died and I got to wear these things instead. But yeah, Quizlemania, longest reigning champion now. I think I've defended it once.
And then you've got hashtag LIW 444444 life, which I don't agree with. But yeah, thanks for the chat. Anyway, get in your super chats or your ultra chats, and we will read more out later in the show. But let's hop in to talking about what happened on NXT 2.0, because we started with a recap of last week where Carmelo Hayes cashed in his contract on Isaiah Swerve Scott at the end of the Santos Escobar match to become the new North American champion. A swerve on swerve, as he pointed out himself when he came to the ring to cut a promo with Trick Williams. Trick essentially asked Alicia to introduce Carmelo twice as the champion, make some noise for Melo. People were very into Melo here. I'm liking these two as a pair. I think that Trick has got a really good promo on him, and I think then he's got that kind of like excitement level. And then when you go to Hayes, he's a bit more measured in the way that he delivers things, but still has he can build his own hype, which is really, really good. And he kind of put out he did the catchphrase, "When I shoot, I don't miss," and said, "As long as this is around my waist, this is the A championship," which was a bit of fun, which dragged out Johnny Gargano, who's not left NXT. There you go. Now we know where he is. And basically, I was just like, oh, he's still with the company then. He says that he's lost his way because Austin's gone. Indy's got married, and Candice is pregnant, which I thought this was good writing. And he says that, essentially he's got to find a new focus, and maybe that focus is now winning back the North American title. I really liked this. I thought Johnny was great here. I thought Trick and Carmelo played off him really well. They kind of had this little moment. I wasn't so keen on the end, especially seeing as it sets up an inevitable tag match that I don't want to see. But it was fun. It was interesting. Johnny's a really good choice for a first challenger for Carmelo as well. What do you think, Tempest?
I totally agree. I think I agree with everything that you just said. I thought that Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes, I think, are a good pair. A lot of the time, it seems like their segments run a little bit long. And I don't think that's especially their fault, because I don't think they had anything to do with the blocking out of Dexter Lumis coming out and whatever. But it did feel like this segment just kind of went on a little bit too long. Nitpick aside, I think Johnny Gargano is like a perfect first opponent for Carmelo Hayes. You're not going to find a better worker in NXT than this guy. And people have been wanting to cheer him as a big.
Ooh.
It seems like they're going. Oh dear. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're both back now.
Okay, cool. I don't know what happened there. Regardless, I think Johnny is just a perfect opponent for Carmelo, and it seems like they're really starting to lean into him as a babyface again, which I've always thought that Johnny Gargano is a better babyface than a heel. He can be an entertaining heel, but when you've got top-notch babyfaces like him, like Sami Zayn, you gotta support them as babyfaces, and it looks like they're going to be doing that now. And I think that's just awesome. I'm really looking forward to this match. I don't know if you could put together a match in NXT that I'd be looking forward to more in the ring than Gargano and Hayes right now.
Yeah, I think people are just desperate to cheer Johnny, and that's really nice to kind of see that come full circle. And Ciampa's back on top as well. So it's nice that NXT still has some little semblance of the thing that it was before, even though it's all mixed in and new. And like I was saying to Pete last week, I think NXT never had a problem with building new stars by having them go up against the older guys. It's when the newer guys are just winning over the older guys for no reason because they're bigger or whatever, or you've decided that they're in every single facet of NXT from the get-go, as they've just elevated everyone suddenly to the position of here's our new main event couple of people, here's our new North American champion couple of people, here's our new lower in the roster few people. Whereas before, you'd work your way up. And that would then make sense. You'd have a journey. You'd grow as a character in front of people, and they would want you to win these things. But I was saying last week as well that I think Carmelo Hayes is one of the few people in NXT who is new, who has earned that position of feeling like he should be this champion. He's a perfect mid-card guy. And yeah, going up against Johnny Gargano is the perfect choice. This is how, in old NXT, you would make a star. So I'm pleased to see this happening. Not necessarily pleased, was they had a little go at Johnny's daughter, and then Dexter Lumis, his son-in-law, is there to attack them from behind and chase them off. Johnny is then left in the... They clear out the ring because Dexter scares them off, and Johnny now has possession of the North American title. which leads Mello and Trick to be looking for it for the rest of the show. How does that make you feel, Tempest? Shaking your head.
Cool. I've never been one where it's just like, I've got your belt. Haha, come and get it. Come and get the belt. Especially when it's like the babyface is taking the belt. I don't know. I think they could have stopped at, hey, you're the new champion. I want to be the champion again. I'm the best wrestler on this brand. I'm going to beat you for it. And I would have been hooked. I would have been totally hooked for this match. And then they kind of went with the Halloween, I'm Dexter Loomis, it's spooky, let me take your belt angle. And I went, no, I don't think you needed to do that.
Yeah, it just makes it seem like that's just because it seems like the match they're trying to go with is going to have some spooky, weird, haunted house element to it as well. Like, I feel like this is going to be like one of their weird dalliances with cinematic nonsense where Hayes and Trick are going to have to go around Dexter's house essentially to find this belt, and that's the red herring they need. The this is the thing, the sort of impetus they need to go around and find it, which is just sad. And yeah, like I think if you're going to do a belt stealing angle, it's fun to do if you've built up a bit of a relationship between these two people. These two people have not interacted before necessarily. So like, it's just weird that Johnny, the babyface, would steal the belt on the first outing, because to be fair, nothing like beyond they said a bit of a rude thing. Nothing else happened in this promo exchange beyond really setting up a match.
Yeah. Like I think if you had done this belt stealing angle with like Cameron Grimes and LA Knight a few months ago, I think that would have worked much better, and it would have kind of played into the comedy of their angle better than what I was kind of hoping from this, which is more a serious match and a star-making performance, perhaps.
No, it's a cheap Escape the Undertaker, which was already cheap. So imagine a cheaper one of that.
Oh man, they could put it on Hulu instead of Netflix.
But anyway, so Odyssey Jones comes out after that, and he high-fives Johnny Gargano on his way out and goes for a high-five with Loomis, but Loomis isn't having any of it. He's against Andre Chase, the second man ever to wrestle in a jumper after Bray Wyatt. He must be awfully hot. This was pretty much a squash match. Odyssey Jones just nails him, does a big splash, wins. Annoyingly, this had build. They built to this squash, which just is nonsense. Like we've had weeks of the same joke of Andre Chase getting annoyed when he tells people to cheat during his university thing, and someone points out that that's what he's told them to do, and then he swears and kicks them out of the class to build to this Odyssey Jones match. And it was just nothing. It was just a thing. So like you actually did some setup here, and you've just decided to do absolutely nothing with it once again.
I think I had a realization watching the show last week of one of the main reasons that I'm not a big fan of NXT 2.0 is they spend so much time on people that lose in matches like this. You know, you look at good wrestling shows and you might do a quick little, hey, this is who I am, if you're seeing them for the first time or something. But they do vignettes and they do promos, they do backstages, they do guy gets interfered with in his matches, all just to build to like a 3-minute squash. I feel like it's such a waste of time that can be used for better things.
Well, also, this should have been like, if you're going to dedicate that much time to something, why aren't you dedicating it to building up Odyssey Jones?
Yeah.
Why aren't you dedicating it to having him have more matches, or to find out more about his character, and not loser Andre Chase, who I think you got his character from the one vignette would have been fine, because to be perfectly honest, all the other vignettes were the same vignette, because it was the same joke. We get it. He's an angry man who wants to cheat, and he gets angry when you point out that it's cheating and not technical wrestling know-how. Completely fine. Yeah, but this is just it was fine. Andre Chase looked okay in the bit that he got in. Odyssey Jones obviously looks great and is very strong and very big. That's fantastic. But yeah, I cannot fathom why this had so much build for what it was. We then got a Diamond Mine promo as Bivens talks about the Creed brothers earning an opportunity for the tag titles, but being overlooked. So instead, they're going to take it, and they then have a match against Imperium. I feel like the Creed brothers' little Diamond Mine singlets looked a lot like pajamas in this scenario. They had a real baby grow quality to them because of the way I don't know. So about the logo just made it look like they were wearing little baby grows to me. I thought this was good. Like I thought these two teams worked really well together. The Creeds do good wrestling. I like these guys, and it is very amateur wrestling inspired in that sense of it's a lot of sort of waist locks and takedowns and that kind of thing, but they do them so incredibly well. Well, I don't know which one is which. I'll never learn it, so I don't care. There was an amazing sort of takedown where he rolled over through a thing and picked him up like it was nothing, and then just started dumping him around. That was really great. Ikemen got a really good hot tag in which he squatted one of the Creeds in the middle of it, but then when Bartel comes back in, he jumps into a dive, gets dumped. This is where it gets weird though, because then Kushida and Ikemen and Jiro run down to sort of interrupt the match, and they run in on Diamond Mine. But one of the Creeds comes out to fight them in the sort of on the ramp and starts swinging, which is fine. Like if the person in the match attacks the person who's run down, we know that is in the rules. You don't necessarily have to stop the match for that. However, Kushida and Jiro started fighting back. So that is a disqualification that the referee was looking at. But then there was a roll up. And during the roll up, he kicked out before 3, but we said 3. And then they rang the bell because Imperium won. This was they did an NXT match, and then they did a Raw finish where they just chucked a load of stuff at it. Because then that wasn't even the end of it. Because then Imperium are jumped by MSK. And I get the fact that this is trying to set up a multi-man tag match, but this is just so dumb. Like this just had too much dumb stuff. And again, like why are you having these no stakes things happen just so you can have a bunch of run-ins and nothing means anything if everything ends in a really weird, stupid way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't understand hardly any of this match after the actual wrestling stopped being the focus. I missed last week's show because I'm not going to watch this NXT show on my week off. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Was there any kind of turn involving Imperium and MSK last week? Because for goodness sake, I didn't understand Imperium being booked as baby faces in this match, which I guess, they're facing the Creed brothers, so it's a double heel match, but they worked as the baby faces. So, okay, I can deal with that. But then they get jumped by MSK, who last I checked are still technically baby faces. The crowd has decided otherwise because they got heartily booed in this beatdown angle, which, I mean, fair enough. They beat on a guy 2-on-1. That's not babyface behavior. I just don't get the booking of this one, and I don't really understand the need to beat the Creed brothers when they've been pushed pretty strong and could be one of those teams, kind of like maybe an Authors of Pain that gets built up underneath, beats a bunch of these jobber teams, and eventually beats an established team and then challenges for the tag titles. I think that's very simple booking that they just kind of throw away these days just for the sake of having a shock win. So I don't know. It was a bit messy. Too much going on.
Well, if the run-in had just caused a disqualification, it would have it still could annoy the Creed brothers, that they didn't get to finish the match they were having, and then that they won, but because of disqualification, and then they would still have perfect reason to be like, we have unfinished business with Imperium, and now we have unfinished business with Kushida and Jiro. But yeah, this was just. It was just too many things. This was just like so much being chucked at a finish that it actually just undid the work of what was actually probably one of the better matches on the show, which was a shame. Speaking of the show, let's speak about this, Tempest. Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner went to the woods together, didn't they? That was a thing that happened. This was insane. This was so dumb.
Bizarre.
Last week when I said, oh, well, it looks like Kyle's singles push is done because he's just going to be friends with Von Wagner now, I was only half serious about that, and no, that looks like what's happening. Kyle turns up with a mountain bike, ready to go mountain biking. Von pulls up in a car or in a truck and says, "No, where we're going, you won't need a mountain bike," and leads him into the woods to find a big tree trunk, a big tree branch, which he then carries through the woods, makes Carl carry through the woods, and then they do a workout with it, Tempest. Oh, yeah. So manly. Look at these two manly men's just working out in the woods with a big bit of tree. Doesn't that make you like wrestling, Tempest? Doesn't it make you like wrestling? And then, they share a beer. Whoa.
Real men. Couple of dudes being bros. Couple of bros being men. Hell yeah. Oh, man.
I love the fact that when because then they have the beer and like he goes, "Oh yeah, there's one last thing to complete this day," and he pulls the beer out and gives it to Kyle. And Kyle, in a completely unactily way of Kyle O'Reilly, because Kyle's a goofy promo, like he's a kind of out there weird promo guy, and he always worked better in the Undisputed Era because he had other people to bounce off. He had Adam Cole holding the whole thing together, and everyone else got to throw in their little jibes. And when Kyle's the focus of delivering a bit of acting or a promo, it always comes off as a little bit stilted but quite funny and goofy. And here he goes, "You're really out there. Maybe we could get on the same page." Cheers the beers. It sucked so much. Why?
Man.
Why did they do this?
I don't know. I mean, it's so weird because they've done so many of these weird ass vignettes since NXT started changing. Like the one that sticks out to me the most is when they had Io Shirai and Zoe Stark go to the Japanese restaurant. And it was just the worst thing I'd ever seen. Where I can imagine that they're sitting in the writer's room and they're like, okay, we need a segment where Io and Zoe try and be friends. And that's a fine first bullet point, and then it all goes wrong. I look at this the same way, where it's like, we need a vignette of Von Wagner and Kyle O'Reilly bonding, working out. Okay, you can do that. That's not a bad idea. But then you just get bogged down with so much goofy crap and terrible dialogue. If they didn't have cheap, the terrible as well to dialogue, be like,
we've gone to the woods. It doesn't. Also, because it's not like, one, it's not out there that a man who is professionally a wrestler works out outside. Yeah. Like, that's not insane. Like, Carl was like, "Oh, you're really kooky for being in the woods." Like, oh, piss off. Two, like,
you wear a fedora and your name's Cool Kyle.
Yeah.
Don't tell him he's weird.
But also, like, it's not a character. It's not a fucking character, Tempest. He hits tires with a hammer and he carries a log. It's not a character. Like, at least there's a reason people are cheering Tony D'Angelo, because at least it's a thing. It makes sense. He's got a thing that he's got a thing that he is, and his character's built around it, and then he's got a catchphrase. Like, that feels very wrestling. Von Wagner holding bigger objects than him and doing squats is not a character. And Kyle O'Reilly should not be his friend. He is exactly the sort of person that old Kyle O'Reilly would have called a dork and a dweeb. And I hate it. And I wish this didn't happen. Wow. Stupid Brokeback Mountain bloody workout section that I hated. So dumb. Terrible stuff.
Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, though. That Kyle O'Reilly would hate Von Wagner.
He'd hate him.
From like yeah. Oh man. This so depresses me. I love Kyle O'Reilly. Oh wow. You're really out there, man.
Whoa, you're a really weird guy. I like you. Maybe we could get on the same page. All right, let's do some more squats. Jesus wept. We then had a little promo from Joe Gacy, who's been hit and miss in NXT so far.
There's been hits.
I think like there's bits of it that work and there are bits of it that don't. And I think the kind of the way they phrase his stuff and the kind of the confusion over what it's because they obviously had a character for him that first week when he got completely rinsed online for all the kind of the classic WWE, people have empathy, so they must be bad, and if you have empathy, you're a bad person, and screw you for being woke, etc. That kind of thing. Like when Daniel Bryan wanted to protect the planet, so he must have been a heel. That kind of thing. And so then they changed it to, so they sort of muddled, they sort of just took the words again, and then they just shook the bag and they tipped him out. And now he just says stuff about snowflakes and empathy that doesn't make any sense. He's sort of become the Bray Wyatt of sort of softly spoken meditational nonsense. But here he's doing all of that. And you're like, well, what in the hell are you doing? And then they do this one little bit where he says, reach out and take my hand. And then they just there's just a really good bit of filming and a reveal shot as Harland appears through glass, essentially, to take his hand. And then that partnership that was set up last week, vaguely set up by the weird moment where Joe Gacy touched Harland on the face. And Harland was suddenly transported back to being like, are you my dad? That all happened again. And now they're going to probably do something at Halloween Havoc. And the monster, we're going to finally see him do something in the ring, I imagine. I think Gacy and Harland could be a really interesting team. I hope they just take Gacy off of the current character track that he's on. I think maybe there's something in him having a kind of understanding and a sympathy and an empathy for a monster. That's really good, but just drop all the stuff talking outwardly to the audience and just using Vince's own weird insecurities to needle people. That's all that crap can go. Just focus on the understanding who Harland is and being the only person who can. That's really fun.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Gacy is a good wrestler. So it's not like you've put a bad character on a bad wrestler and there's just nothing there and I want him to go away forever. I want Joe Gacy to be able to beat Joe Gacy. And the delivery of his material is fine. It's just the material itself is crap. So if you take the same delivery and the same kind of like the way he carries himself, but apply it to a tag partner like Harland, who is as green as can be and could benefit from having Joe Gacy as a partner, I think that's a much better avenue to go than just be like, yes, snowflake, triggered, etc., etc. You know, get rid of that part, focus on the good stuff, and you'll be fine. I don't think they're going to do that, though.
No, he'll remain a heel forever for having empathy. That's the key, the crux of the argument, Tempest. We then got a Legado del Fantasma promo where Santos Escobar say he's usually blessed by Lady Luck, but last week that didn't quite happen. He calls out Carmelo Hayes for stealing the win, calls him a lucky son of a bitch, and then goes to offer the microphone to Elektra Lopez, which brings out Cora Jade for a match where Cora Jade steals the win and then runs off backstage. She's becoming more and more another Page. Got a roll up, did you? I see.
Yeah, it's cool. It's another short match. You know, there's just a lot of short matches on NXT where there's not really anything to talk about. This was like a reverse squash where she got squashed throughout and then lost or then won. It's cool. It's whatever. It makes me kind of sad that Elektra Lopez was introduced as part of Legado del Fantasma less than 2 months ago, and she's already kind of getting beat in matches like this. It feels like as soon as they moved Hit Row on, they just had nothing for her in particular. I don't know. I think this whole faction should have gotten called up.
Yeah, I think they would. I think maybe she would be better to continue to just be a manager kind of role if they don't have any real plans for her. Because, she's kind of the weak link in the chain, it turns out now, because the rest of them are like well booked, doing well in NXT, essentially, as evidenced by some of the stuff that later happened, because we then got the Persia Pirotta, Io Shirai, and Jacy Jayne shenanigans. And then we saw Legado del Fantasma backstage beating some people up in front of Cora Jade, being like, see, that's why you don't roll up Elektra Lopez. But what are their names? The Hillbilly
Briggs
Bunch.
And,
the Hillbilly
Brooks
Bunch are, they're also getting involved in that. So that seemingly sets up something for later, but I feel like the commentary didn't really bother with that. Like, it was quite obvious that this whole bit was to set up what was going to happen later in the show, and commentary just sort of skirted over it, being like, oh, something's happening backstage. Moving on. And then Tony D'Angelo said some stuff again, which is all good stuff, but it's just stuff.
He's
Just
kidnapped someone.
Yes,
He's a real criminal. He's not even just like I'm gonna make him disappear. Forget about it. Now it's there's a dude in my trunk.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also Dexter Lumis exists, and he's done that before. So
I didn't like that either.
Yeah, well, but Tempest is not, and also Legado del Fantasma Legado del Fantasma kidnapped people last week, which we've never seen again. So it's like there's a lot of kidnap going on in NXT. There's a lot of kidnappers. It's a weird place to work, as evidenced by Ikemen Jiro interrupting a Wii that Kushida was having to try to say that they should be tag partners.
I thought they already were.
They both came out. They came out together, earlier in the show, and then just to cement it, Jiro asked Kushida at his weakest moment. His wang was out, so he thought this is the best time to ask. Asked him to team up. Kushida basically said that I want a fancy jacket as well, and he was like, no, because you're Kushida, and then tips Kushida's bag out on a toilet floor, which is that's gross. That is just bad behavior. And then puts the jacket on, the puffer jacket on Kushida, and says it's time to go back to the future, essentially. So kind of putting Kushida back to where he was before, but I feel like Kushida's never not been that Kushida necessarily. Like he wore jeans for a bit. When he was sort of like brawling Kushida, and then he's transferred back to kind of like his older gear. But yeah, I don't know. This just felt weird. Just a very strange segment of the show. And like, obviously that's what Jiro's about, but why?
I don't know. Wash your damn hands. I can't believe how much happened here. And it was like, he was just full on knob out, taking a Wii. And now you're fist pumping and touching his stuff and touching up his jacket. And I'm like, oh, stop. No, please.
I would never have been his tag partner if you tip my stuff on the floor in the toilet, Tempest. I'm never tagging with you. That's it.
Okay.
I'm also never wearing those clothes again.
Yeah, I was about to say Kushida's got to go to the store and get a whole new set of luggage.
Yeah, but he turned around and was like, "Yes, please crown me in the jacket you've just put on the floor in the toilet." Man, the nut stuff happened on this NXT.
Sure did.
And I feel like somehow that wasn't the weirdest thing that happened on the show, because the Kyle O'Reilly Von Wagner Woods loving was the best, was the weirdest thing that happened. Not the best thing. Sorry, that was a weird Freudian slip. We then got Tony D'Angelo versus Ru Feng, who I think they spent 5 seconds on his name. Ru Feng does kung fu. Unbelievable. Tony D'Angelo says it was as easy as beating up his brother to put him in a headlock, and he gives him a little noogie. And then he does his sort of bridging suplex, rolls through, and does a sort of fisherman's twisting neck breaker type thing to pick up a very, very easy victory. He then gets interviewed by Samantha Irvin, who says, who tries to ask him about where Mark, the producer from Lashing Out with Lash Legends, has gone, which might explain why the show is so bad. Probably doesn't. He says he doesn't know nothing about nothing. Gives her some money, tells her to get herself something nice, take care of herself, and forget about it.
Forget about it.
It's a character. It's a character. Yeah. It's got things going on. It's a shame that it's all wrapped up in the Lash Legend stuff, which Lashing Out might be one of the worst things I've ever seen. But then we did have the Woods stuff. So I don't know. NXT 2.0 is weird.
It sure is. It sure is. This guy is a bright spot on this show. I will say that. He's got a fun character that people are into. Everyone can tweet the emoji every time he's on screen. So he's got like that little extra tie-in. He's got a thing. And so many of these other characters, like you see Duke Hudson's playing poker. I could not care less about that character. He doesn't have a thing. Tony D'Angelo has a thing. He also shares a name with a bad person, so you could have fixed that, but they never did. So, Tony D'Angelo, what you got to do? Forget about it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting as well, because like they've clearly seen that, you know, something like Tony D'Angelo works for the NXT crowd. So they've suddenly tried to inject a lot of these other guys that they had from the breakout tournament with a hook or a gimmick. Like it feels like very much like they've done that kind of WWE thing of going like we're doing character class this week, and then they've all graduated their character class and been like, I do poker.
Yeah.
I wear a jacket. That kind of like it feels like that's kind of what's happened here. And I feel like D'Angelo is the only person who's got a gimmick that suits the person he is. He's chosen something that actually makes sense. Whereas, Duke Hudson's suddenly playing poker, and then Andre Chase running a university. Andre Chase running a university does kind of make sense, and I like it, but not if he's going to lose, you know?
They really did hit like almost everyone in this breakout tournament. You know, it's like, I don't know if you watched the 2015 Tough Enough show, but there was like an episode of that show where you go and you're doing character class, and everyone like draws a thing from a hat, and it's like, this guy is the British brawler, this guy is the king of the ring, this girl is whatever, and they were just like generic bits. It feels like everyone went and drew from a hat, and Joe Gacy got woke savior, Tony D'Angelo got Italian mobster, Duke Hudson got poker player, Andre Chase got teacher, and it's like, it feels weird for 2021 to just be like, here's a bunch of gimmicks. Like really heavy gimmicks. None of them feel like themselves. Tony D'Angelo is probably the closest one, and that's maybe why I like it.
Yeah, I think because like NXT before, obviously, I think people had gimmicks. They had stuff about them and like their way of doing things, or like it was more usually led by their athleticism that kind of determined the way in which they were presented. Or like Aleister Black, it was very like heavily influenced by what he looks like. Whereas this just feels like, like you said, people have just lucky dipped into a bag full of quite cheesy gimmicks. It feels like a party game, essentially. This has got kind of parlor game. This has got Snake Oil vibes, where it's just like, you are this guy, sell it. And that to me just doesn't make sense. You know, we then saw Duke Hudson on this episode right after this in his poker room, saying he's always open to taking suckers' money or beating them in the wrestling ring. Two things that go together perfectly well.
A nice go home line.
Wins.
No, call me the house because the house always wins. That's a good little line.
They thought of one line. I think this is the problem with a lot of these characters. They are one line deep, and that is a major issue. But obviously Tony D'Angelo is really working that one line. Forget about it.
Forget about it.
We then were going to get Brooks Jensen and Briggs, whatever his surname is, versus Legado del Fantasma, but they've been attacked before the match happens. And basically they get beaten up. We then cut to a break. Coming back from the break, it's revealed that during the break, Briggs and Jensen. Yeah. Briggs and Jensen came out being like, oh man, we're still going to have this match. They pushed some attendants who were trying to make them go to the back. They then have the match and get worked over for a lot of it because they're quite heavily injured from chair shots. There's a really good bit where Briggs gets out of the ring and he tries to get in Santos's face, gets distracted by Wilde or Mendoza, who's also on the outside. And Santos just, from perfectly still, just rushes him, pushes him into the apron really fast, and then goes back to sitting really still on the announce table while looking swish as all hell. I love Santos Escobar. I love Legado del Fantasma. I think they're so good. And I thought this was actually like a pretty good little match. Again, it was just a bit kind of confusing towards the end.
Yeah, a little bit. I think they did a good job of protecting the big, tough baby faces and making them want to go out and fight, even though they'd been attacked. You know, it was a way to protect them and have them still lose to the smaller heels. And I think that was effective. You know, you don't need to have them come back next week and attack people 2-on-1 like MSK did, because that's not babyface behavior. This was, you know, they were valiant. They didn't get the win, but they had that fighting spirit, even though they'd been attacked. So I think they booked that part of it well enough. And I also really like Santos Escobar. I was listening to the F4W shows this week where they're just like, he is your next Hispanic superstar. You know, they've missed out on so many guys for whatever reason over the years. He is effectively the total package for what they're looking for. I don't know why he's in NXT. You know, I said earlier he should have been called up. They all should have been called up. This group is just great.
Yeah, the only reason to keep him in NXT is you want to make him the NXT champion, but I don't think they're going to do that. I think he will be. I think if Bron Breakker wins the championship next week, I can see Santos Escobar being a first challenger, and then hopefully they would move him up after that. But yeah, they're gonna he's got. If it doesn't happen in the next 6 months, I think he's just kind of will have floundered by that point, because they should have just gone up with Hit Row to SmackDown and just continued doing that with more matches. Because once we actually got the match that was being built for so long in NXT, it was bloody awesome, and I'd happily watch Swerve and Santos do it again and again and again. Legado del Fantasma pick up the win with their tilt-a-whirl Russian leg sweep with a running kick thing that doesn't. The tilt-a-whirl bit makes no sense at all, but it's fun. It looks nice. And then we got a Raquel Gonzalez / Mandy promo. Raquel Gonzalez basically said while Mandy was dyeing her hair, she's been in the gym a lot doing gym stuff, so she's going to win. Mandy said, "I'm amazing. Look at me. I'm Mandy Rose. I'm going to win.
I'm just so sexy. I will win because I'm so sexy." I actually enjoyed this vignette. I thought this was a good promo.
It's good. I'm not super hyped for the match. I'm still, I'm hoping that if this is given time and it's got a good stipulation from the wheel, then Mandy Rose can kind of rise to the occasion and show us a bit more, because I don't think she's ever necessarily shown us that kind of she should be going for a top title kind of contention levels. We then got another promo from whoever that is digging a grave, where they put a TV, a playing card, a crutch, a chair, and then they in a grave and bury it, and then they smash a mirror, and said something about reincarnation. But I don't know. I couldn't really pick up because the audio was so terrible. They said something leads to reincarnation. Who do we think it is? Probably Dakota Kai. In my head, but I don't know.
Sure. I have not the slightest clue who this might be, But
we're going to get the reveal next week. So that's something interesting to watch out for. A little bit of excitement for next week. And they also said that, what's his face? Sika Solo, or what's his name?
Solo Sikoa?
That's
something
it.
like that.
He's going to be debuting next week as well at Halloween Havoc, which is good. We then got Hayes and Trick looking for the title in the lockers, obviously not checking the locker that's got a light in it and smoke coming out of it. No, let's look in Jiro's locker first. Make sure that he hasn't got the title.
It's like a video game.
Yeah.
It's like that's the chest that's lit up right there. I bet it's in that one.
Trick pulls out a picture that's been drawn by Dexter Loomis, obviously, and some sort of invitation. Says, I think they wrote it in Da Vinci Code. They've been invited to some sort of Halloween house party that they have to go to. After that, LA Knight took on Grayson Waller in a competition to be the host of Halloween Havoc, a most prestigious honor. I don't know what's going on in NXT.
Oh, man.
Remember when Shotzi was just the host? She was just the host. It was also because she was the most spooky. That makes sense. LA Knight hosting Halloween Havoc doesn't make any sense. But fine, you do you, NXT.
Cool. We got a good match. We got a good match out of it. I enjoyed these two together. I didn't care about this stupid ass stipulation, but take your hits when you can.
Yeah, this was another thing that this is something that you can chuck a match into a show. You've got something that's vaguely worth fighting over, and you give it 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is the problem with NXT. They don't give anything enough time to really get going, and this never quite got going as a match. I didn't like Waller's little silly white gloves either. He almost got 2 roll-ups on Knight very early on, and then he goes on the ropes to do a sort of, he sidles along the ropes quite precariously to do a splash. Knight rushes him, he jumps off, rolls through, and then runs straight into a blunt force trauma. Knight picks up the win. So I don't know. This is NXT seems to be smoothing out all the elements where before they would have just had 20-minute matches. They would have just dedicated some time, and this is the thing, when they're going up against AEW, They did a lot of longer matches to be like, we're building hype for something on a weekly basis for you to show. And now the show just feels like it's got that same odd pacing that Raw has, where everyone is walking out during somebody else's entrance, or somebody else is leaving the ring as somebody else is entering all the time, which just isn't the way wrestling is clean. They're fist bumping in the aisles, blah, 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 blah. So we can fit more promo packages in about whether or not Von Wagner and Kyle O'Reilly are going to go mountain biking or not, or whether Duke Hudson plays poker. Like, just put more wrestling in your wrestling show. I don't understand. Like, why are they so obsessed with this idea that wrestling only needs to be 5 minutes long? And that's what, that's enough for the people who like wrestling, because we tell stories here. It's like, other TV exists and it does stories better than this. So I've clearly come here for the wrestling. I don't know. What did you think your USP was? Morons. Jesus. We then got Ciampa versus Ciampa and Bron Breakker versus Grizzled Young Veterans. I actually wanted to make this the title of the video. I didn't, because I don't think it's... I didn't, because I don't think it's going to track very well. So we went with a Jacy Jayne potential injury that seems more newsworthy. However, this was WWE leaning into the meme. And I do not like that they think they can lean into the meme. That's the only glimmer of hope that we have with your rubbish booking, is that we get to take the piss out of it. You can't also take the piss out of it for being crap and then still do it. That is not funny or interesting or clever. Useless.
Yeah. Man. Saying wink, wink, nudge, nudge, haha, can they coexist? Like, acknowledging the problem is not fixing the problem. They're not self-aware enough to be able to pull this off. Like, this sort of thing is the kind of thing I would expect to see, like, on Being the Elite, maybe, like a comedy show that's very self-aware and can make fun of itself if something goes wrong. They're just like, hey, we're doing the bad thing again. Haha, you guys like to make jokes about it. We'll make the jokes too.
Yeah,
they coexist?
The problem is also, though, because the memes exist, that social media interaction, and WWE is fueled by people just having a reaction. So, like, it doesn't matter to them necessarily whether it's a good or a bad reaction, as long as people are reacting to it. So the best thing to do, if they do a main event in which people who are having a match later in the week or the next week or at pay-per-view or whatever have to do a tag match and can't coexist, is just don't say anything. Like, we should just cut them out of the shows. We shouldn't really be talking about this at all. Don't say it on social media. And then they'll stop doing it because people don't care about it. That's the best way to do it. Overall, though, aside from the fact that this is absolute horse crap booking, to just do this again a week before they're going to have a singles match, it was a perfectly fine little match. Bron does some really fun little bits, like where he rolls through a drop down and picks James Drake up like it's absolutely nothing. He is really impressive. Like, he has that Steiner quality where he's just like huge and a brick, but he moves like he's a hummingbird. Like, he's insane. He wouldn't tag Ciampa in, so Ciampa does the hard tag to get himself in. He does a bunch of clothesline spots, does his knee strike in the corner, and does the sort of night-night taunt, but right in Bron's face. The Grizzled Young Vets then do their job and start to work over Ciampa's injured neck, which kind of makes sense. But Ciampa is the NXT champion. I don't necessarily want to, a week out from him having a match at Halloween Havoc, see him get worked over so that the newer, younger, greener Bron Breakker can come in and be impressive and make a big save. That doesn't make me feel good, especially when you put Ciampa as the champion because he never lost the belt, and you're putting that over as an idea as well. So, like, if he does lose the belt, it's going to feel cheap again that he's lost this belt after having been worked over this week, and then it's to a new guy as well. Breakker also did the Steiner recliner at one point. in this match, and they were like, "Oh, look, a recliner." So dumb. Just call him a Steiner.
They're barking. The fans are barking during his hot tag and his shine spots and everything. Every piece of it is there. There's the siren in his entrance. Everything's there. They just haven't given him the name. And I think it's solely just to piss me off at this point.
It's so weird to want the thing, but then not do the thing. Like, this is, again, WWE, this is the same thing as the meme thing. Like, to lean into the meme and then still do it. It's just like, this is that same thing of being like, we want all the glory of like him having the legacy of being a Steiner and all the little nods and the winks that we can put into everything, but we just don't want to satisfy anyone by calling him that.
He would be like one of my top 10 favorite wrestlers right now if his name was just Rex Steiner. That would complete the package. I would think he's like a perfect prospect for NXT, and they are refusing to do it. Absolutely refusing.
So yeah, and then to answer the question of whether or not they can coexist, they didn't necessarily. Ciampa tags out with a very hard tag to Breaker, who then comes in and goes to swing at Ciampa, who ducks. He hits James Drake instead. We then get the Steiner recliner spot, and then Braun does his big gorilla press slam thing that's really blooming impressive. I think Braun's going to be really good. He's just been shot into a position that it's not even that he's not ready for. I just think the fans aren't ready for him to necessarily be there. Like 3 more months, 2 more months, like just a little bit more time, because he's also only had a limited number of matches. So he's not even just done the regular thing of coming in as a monster guy and just squashing people for like a month. Come in, squash people for a month, have 2 good TV matches, and then go after the belt. It doesn't have to be next week, Tempest. Next week.
Yeah. Next week. Oh, Lord. Yeah, the only other thing I'll say about this match is basically what you said. If this was the first time I'd seen this booking, I probably wouldn't have minded the match that much, because I think the match itself was pretty good. It's just it's a rerun at this point. Like, I just watched Raw. I watched Big E and Drew have the exact same match. The exact same match, which I've seen 3 other times. It's like, I see this match twice a week at minimum. It's like, I get it. You could do it well, but there's only so many times I can go to the same theater to see the same show. You know, I want to see something different.
Well, this is the thing, is like, like WWE doesn't exist. These matches don't exist in a bubble. Like, it's not, like you said, it's not the only thing. And like, WWE as a product should know that it is draining its audience with its repetitive booking, and think about that. Because, you know, TV show, they don't make Friends. In Friends, for instance, all 6 characters in Friends didn't all have the same storyline every week. They weren't all just doing the same thing, but separately, and we just watched it over and over again. They all had they were all a different component of a different storyline and had their own little arcs going on. That's how you do characters. You don't just go like, no, every single person is coexisting with someone else this week. That is what we're going to do. But that was basically the show. The show ended with Bron Breakker and Tommaso Ciampa facing off in the ring as Ciampa clutched Goldie, and Bron was not Rex Steiner. And next week the Halloween Havoc's happening, and they're gonna face off for the NXT Championship, and Bron Breakker is gonna win it, isn't he? He's gonna win it.
Maybe that would be a big statement for this show. That would be a real transition from the old to the new. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but go for it. Who cares?
What I actually think is going to happen is that Harland is going to get involved in this and cost Breakker he's going to cost Breakker the win. Breakker and Harland are going to have a feud. Something else happens with Tommaso Ciampa as the champion, and then probably that transition happens slightly later on. That's fine with me. I don't mind that. Overall, it was another episode of NXT that was all right. It wasn't as all right as last week's episode of NXT, which had a really good match on it. This week only had all right matches and a bunch of nonsense in the woods.
I keep
What are
forgetting
you
about the
gonna
woods.
do? Forget about
Forget
it.
about
I
it.
can never forget about it. I'll never unsee it. But before we get into the Ultra Chats that have come in during the show, we just need to thank some patrons and give them a little bit of a shout out. So I would like to thank the Batsman, Nathan Batty, for their support on Patreon.
Yes. Golden, Nick Holden.
Yeah. Thomas Ciampa, the Irish champion.
The Venerable, Jesse Venable. Yeah.
John J13 Napier.
Yeah. The Pagan Maker, William Pagan. Yeah.
That one makes no sense, but thank you, William. All-Star Chuck Turner. That one makes sense.
The Real Boss, Matt Robinson.
Yeah. Chris Hellfire Brimstone. Yeah. Is Brimstone your actual surname? Because that's awesome.
I hope so. That's a great name. Always leave the crowd wanting Brian Moore.
Yeah. Here comes the money. Fred Buckland.
Here we go. And Hector H. Train Mersado.
Thank you very much for your support on Patreon. If you want to become a patron of WrestleTalk, then probably the information is in the description down below. You get access to loads of bonus content, like extra podcasts and the like. So let us move on to your Ultra Chats that came in during the show. There's just a few to go through. Riot DR said, based on his performance, Von Wagner, what's his name, appears to be a cyborg built for combat, but is slowly learning about emotions of the humans.
I need the T2 scene with Kyle O'Reilly teaching him how to smile.
That'll be what happened when Von Wagner. The first time he gets pinned, he'll do that, and yeah. I hate it. I don't. It's not a character. I feel like Harland is the one that's more got that idea of like learning emotions as well. That'd be interesting to see. Like I said, I think there's something about Joe Gacy and Harland as a team that works for me. I just want it to be that's the focus of Joe Gacy's character is that he's the only one who can crack the nut of Harland rather than just slagging off everyone else for having empathy. Jesus. Yeah. Will Campbell says, hey guys, super glad Johnny is a face again. Love him with the way, but I like him much better as a face than a heel. If there is anyone who can get a hell of a match out of Melo, it's Johnny Wrestling. Also with this potential return of Rebel Heart. Hashtag jam that jam.
Hope so. I love that song.
I think because also in this instance, I think the pop would have been bigger if Johnny came back with that music this episode. Like there was a moment when the way music interrupts Carmelo as he's talking, and because that music's a bit weird, it doesn't quite hit. Like people in the audience weren't necessarily like going crazy for Johnny until Johnny walked out, and because they were sort of like, also because it could have been anyone. There's there's 4 members of that faction. If it had just been Rebel Heart, people would have gone like, yes, Johnny. But yeah, I'm really hopeful that song returns because it absolutely slaps. Charles Berg says, well, instead of watching NXT 5.3, I went out with my brother to get some delicious Peking duck. Here's a joke. A father and son cannibal are eating a man. The father asks, son, are you having fun? The son says, yeah, dad, I'm having a ball. Jam that jam.
Jesus.
Charles Berg, you wash your potty mouth out.
This is the bit after they cut of Von Wagner and Kyle O'Reilly in the woods. This is their food supply.
That maybe that's it. It's not that he's an emotionless robot. It's that he's a cannibal. Kyle O'Reilly did not survive the night. That's what he was doing that's what they were doing with the tree trunk Tempest. It was fattening up. Eternal Blue says the comments from Adam's dad today were honestly gut-bustingly ironic and funny to me. It's like Judas telling the Romans, "Don't kill Jesus, just shut up and conquer Gaul again." Funniest thing I've seen all week, and I've watched Kraken hockey.
Hell yeah, go Kraken! Seattle.
The Atrophy Channel says, "Hey, off-topic positivity. How do you lads feel about my favorite sandwich? Pickle and bacon
Mm.
cheese?
Haven't tried it. My rule of thumb is I don't. You know what? No, I'll give it a try. That doesn't sound too bad, actually. That's just most of the components of like a bacon cheeseburger, just without the beef.
If it was ham, I'd be more into it, but bacon's fine. Like I like
I don't hate it.
Pickle good. Hammies type meat, good. Cheese, good. Grilling all of that together, good. Yeah, it sounds great. I'm into it. What sauce goes in that is the main question, though, because it needs a sauce. Plasma Petey says, do you guys think a new generation of DX would work in NXT?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
No,
not.
I think
DX worked because it was people saying, haha, Vince, I'm going to go and show my ass on TV and you can't stop me. Not one person will ever do that again. To that level. Just be like, I don't care about the networks.
Yeah.
Because that's why DX worked.
Yeah, and the problem with NXT as well is that people like the management. People want the management of NXT to be left alone. So unless it was a faction, like I don't think a DX would work, but a faction in which they were after the old guard to be brought back into NXT because NXT's gone downhill again. That might work, but then that's kind of a bit too inside baseball for one thing, and two, doing that thing that WWE likes to do where it points out there's a problem and it's rubbish and then just leans into it for some reason. So yeah, I don't think that would be a good idea at all.
I think we got close with Undisputed Era. You know,
yes,
it was kind of the same feel a little bit, but now they've done that. So now do a different thing.
I can also definitely see a world in which NXT maybe leans a bit more on the idea of the thing that AEW does very well, which is they bring in legendary talent to manage younger guys and give a bit of the shine to them. So like something in which Shawn Michaels decides that, you know, rather than just being a backstage hand on the tiller for NXT, he's going to directly manage a protege or something, or a team of people. That could be something that might work in a sense, but they have to not be DX.
Yeah.
It has to just be something else that seems to have sort of drawn the passion of Shawn Michaels back into sort of the wrestling sphere. But that is all we've got time for. That's all the Ultra Chats we have. Thank you so much for sending them in. Thank you so much for your comments and for watching the video. Please leave it a like if you have enjoyed it, and go listen to the audio version where there's even more banter from me and Tempest. There are more WrestleTalk things coming up this week. Tempest has reminded me we're probably not doing AEW Dynamite because that is also on Saturday, but you do have the Friday magazine show with Adam and Denise. You have got SmackDown on Saturday, and tomorrow, well, actually, after this, you've got predictions with Ollie and Adam, so look out for that on the channel. And you've also got Crown Jewel, which I forgot to put over in the audio version of the podcast, but Adam and Ollie will be doing live reactions to Crown Jewel tomorrow evening, whatever time that is. I won't be watching it. Saudi Arabia. See you later. Thanks for watching. Love you. Goodbye. Jam that.